I live in a small Midwestern town with a population of about 400. This must have started around 6 or 7 years ago when I was around 13. My grandpa has owned a small house just off a highway, right smack dab in the middle of town, for over 30 years now. Around COVID times, my aunt moved in with him, and while my grandpa is a truck driver, so gone a good chunk of the time, I would stay with my aunt quite a bit. We had no Wi-Fi, so most of our pastime was spent coloring, listening to music, or telling scary stories, mostly family stories. Around this time, we would sometimes hear the usual bumps in the night. One night, while my aunt was alone, she said she heard the sound of metal jingling, but ignored it. Another few days go by. My grandpa comes home to find a lock on his cellar door to be in pieces on the ground, as if they were cut by bolt cutters. My aunt concluded that this must have been what she heard. The only other big thing that happened then was once my aunt heard her dog, a huge German Shepherd Great Pyrenees, barking uncontrollably outside. When she went out to check, a man was standing over the fenced-in backyard. He took off running when she came outside. Around a year later, my aunt moved out for a while, and nothing seemed to happen over at that house. At least that we know of course. There's no way of really knowing, considering my grandpa was at work weeks at a time, with no one else at the house. However, over at my house, this was when things started to pick up. My parents worked nights, leaving me and my 2 younger brothers alone. Their sleep schedule would impact ours a lot, leading us to stay up until early morning a lot. We would hear the occasional taps on windows and footsteps outside. Twice, things got really bad at my window specifically. Someone had slapped the window by my head while I was sleeping one night. Another time, while my parents were home, the sounds lights of a camera were coming from right outside. My parents would either look themselves or call a male family member to come look around our house and never saw anything. This all lasts until I'm about 16, and my aunt moves back in with my grandpa. Things are okay for about a year when everything starts back up again. Please note that my uncle moved into our town about a year before my aunt moved back in. Things ramp up by a lot. Once, about 2 summers ago when I was 17, I was half asleep in my room, around 2 a.m., when someone started banging on the front door. I have never actually heard the police bang on a door, but it sounds just as it's shown in movies. My dog was going crazy, so I knew I wasn't the only one who heard it, but it was late enough for me to choose to ignore it and try to go back to sleep. But I couldn't, so I got up, and as I was about to step into our kitchen, it happened again. But I knew at this point that if it was the police, or someone in need of help, they would say something. But it was dead silent, apart from the banging, the dog, and my heartbeat. I sat on the floor and called my stepdad, asking for advice when my brother lazily walked out of his room, asking what was going on. He took my dog and answered the door, to be faced with nothing, of course. This last summer, I got into the habit of sleeping on the couch when my parents were at work because my friend and I would camp out there. However, one night, when it was just me, I woke up at around 6 a.m. to both front and back doors completely wide open for no reason. None of our animals had run out amazingly, so I had to conclude that they had just been opened. This happened a separate time, where I unfortunately didn't wake up, and my mom came home from work in the morning to doors blown open and all of our pets in the yard to be rounded up. This past year has been horrible for my aunt when she's alone. 1. She is woken in the middle of the night to a man holding a flashlight in her window. 2. She had a small red dot hit her chest from the same window. 3. She came home one night and let her dog out, and when she did, 2 major things happened at once. She saw a man start taking off from behind a tree, and her dog started eating something that wasn't there before. Her dog can be slightly aggressive when it comes to food, so, although she tried to take it, she ended up swallowing it before she could. The dog, later on, acted as if she was sick and very tired. She wouldn't eat anything, her tongue lolled, and she cried. My aunt was worried sick, believing whoever was running off from behind the fence threw Benadryl in a burger patty at her dog to put her to sleep. Mind you, this dog is probably her biggest protection when she's alone. 4. A car pulled into the driveway one night. My aunt heard metal jangling again, and then she heard banging coming from the basement door that connects to the house. Her dog barked at whoever was trying to get in the door, and soon after my aunt heard the car take off again. This time, she says the metal sounded like the cellar doors being thrown open. 5. Once she was painting her closet, she opened the back door to let the fumes out in daylight. She never saw anything, but suddenly the dog bounced up and she cut her nails hitting the kitchen tiles as she ran towards the bedroom, then turned around and took off outside, growling and barking at something. 6. Many points in the backyard fence are leaning so far back that it appears someone is bending it back to crawl over it, right where the camera conveniently doesn't point, showing that whoever this is knows where the cameras are. Other than my aunt, my grandpa has stories of his own. Twice, while he was home alone, he heard someone banging on the side of his house, and the second time, it sounded to him like they were fully body slamming the front door. Both times he went out to look and no one had been there. But the most important thing, on his security camera, one night while my aunt was pulling into the driveway, there was a man crouched behind bushes, rolling down the hill, out of my aunt's sight as she got out. This is the only time a person has shown up on the cameras. However, it's not the first time they've triggered the motion sensor in them. It's happened quite a bit, but they're always just out of view before something happens. Based on all of this information, I originally thought this was just happening to our family for some odd reason, but upon asking some other women in the area, it's not just us. Other women, when they're home alone, have been experiencing similar things. A lady close to my aunt even mentioned someone full-on frogging, squatting, and stealing her food at night. I'm not sure why it's happening, who is doing it, or what's going to happen when they're inevitably caught by someone, but it's scary nonetheless. It also seems to be ramping up as time goes by, the latest couple of happenings involving genuine attempts at break-ins, which never happened before my aunt left all those years ago.